Welcome to the How to Buy a Home podcast. Today's episode answers the question, how to buy a home affordably in 2026 with these high home prices and high interest rates. There's a proven technique that isn't going to break your bank and it won't leave you house poor. It's called the rent replacement strategy, and it's the solution that you've been hoping for.
How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time homebuyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers.
What's happening, How to Buy a Home? I'm David Sidoni, and if you're thinking, yo, Sidoni, with today's prices and interest rates, I don't have a clue how to make this work. Well, this episode's going to give you the clarity and confidence you need. This is the ultimate playbook for buying your first home in today's economy. And if you're new to the show, this is a great place for you to start, because today's episode is part 1 of what we call the playbook. Part 2 is the Last Lease Ever program, and that's got clear, practical action steps that anybody can start today, even if you're a year or 2 from when you think you're going to be able to buy a home. So after you finish part 1 and part 2 of this playbook series, go to episode 500. That's where you get the ultimate 10-step home buying guide. And all this stuff is free. This is where you can learn everything that you need to know, including the stuff that big real estate would rather that you never found out about. We're going to put all that in the episode guide. It'll be in the show notes for you. This is a sharing and learning community here, but the goal isn't for you to stay here and research yourself to death. This community has a mission: education, clarity, and then actions that will work for you. And it starts here with the playbook for first-time homebuyers. This is for people buying in 26, 27, and beyond. Today's part 1, the education and clarity. Part 2 is going to be those action steps. We're going to begin with a rent replacement strategy, the key to super boosting your confidence with the math and the mindset. Doesn't matter if your goal is 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years out. And like every great team playbook, this one's built on a core philosophy: the big picture thinking behind the steps in the game plan. Yeah, I decided to go sports analogy on this one. I'm a self-diagnosed real estate data nerd, and I've been crafting this philosophy for 20 years. I also happen to be a sports fanatic and a monster musical theater geek. Yeah, I understand that is a really weird mix. What can I say? But this one, the sports connection comparison, is what I'm going to use. Thus, that's why this is called the playbook. This first-time homebuyer playbook, it's designed to get you to your Super Bowl home ownership. So right now, all of you are on your quest to get your championship ring. For my non-sports people, think Tony or Oscar. To win that ring, it starts in training camp. Before any games are played, the team focuses on a single philosophy. It's a team motto. All the great coaches announce their motto on day 1. Bill Belichick, it was do your job. Pat Summitt was attitude is a choice. And Tom Landry, the great coach of the Dallas Cowboys many, many moons ago, his was the will to prepare is more important than the will to succeed. That one, for first-time homebuyers, it's tattoo worthy. Worth repeating. The will to prepare is more important than the will to succeed. And of course, my favorite coach, Ted Lasso, his motto, believe. So your first-time homebuyer training camp motto, build a rent replacement strategy. It's the core mindset for finding housing affordability and never fearing being house poor. It shapes every action and every decision in the process. And why is it so important now? Because your opponent has changed in the last few years. Buying a home in the back half of 26 or in 27, it is not the way buying a home was in 2021 or 22. And honestly, it's not even the same way it was in February of 2026. To win now, you're going to need a new playbook with a new mindset. Every single month, your rent, that's the biggest bill that you pay. Thousands of dollars leave your account and they do nothing for your future wealth. And I know you keep hearing from people, don't throw away your money on rent, save up and buy. Yeah, okay, boomer. Have you looked around in this market? Have you seen home prices and interest rates? Today's first-time home buyer, they can't use that terrible old school boomer motto, just save up and buy a house. It completely ignores the ugly reality of today. But don't worry, that is absolutely not my jam. We're going to get you the new playbook for the math that renters face today. Forget all that boomer chatter. This is the playbook that works now. It's a simple concept, but it's got profound results. This strategy is a financial plan. Leverage your largest monthly output, your rent, and replace what it does for you. to get you into an affordable investment that grows your net worth. So let's put some numbers on this. Zillow's July national median rent for a starter size home was $2,300. So let's compare that to buying a $400,000 home today. If we start with an affordable buy-in price using a low down payment option, you could use 3%, 3.5%, or 5% down. For this example, we'll run the numbers at 5% down with a 6.5% interest rate on your loan. The monthly PITI plus PMI, that's your principal, your interest, your taxes, your insurance, and your private mortgage insurance, that payment's $2,900 a month. And with the right team finding you better loan programs and better interest rates, it could definitely be lower than that. But I'm going to run the numbers on the high side to make the point. Renting right now for a starter home, $2,300, buying $2,900. Did you hear that and think, damn, that's $600 more than rent? Freaking homes are so unaffordable right now. Okay, technically, yes, of course, mathematically it is. But that's only one single factor in the equation. And as a homeowner, you're using 100% of that normally lost $2,300 a month. And that's just the beginning of where the comparison education falls short. There's so much more advantageous math than just that one variable. So let me coach you up with some encouraging numbers that favor you even in this market. It's $600 a month more, but if you're paying $2,300 in rent, you're already covering 79% of a mortgage payment on a $400,000 house. And if you pay $2,500 a month, like a lot of you do, you're already paying 86%. And all that money, it's not invested in you, it's invested in your landlord. So that $600 in a mortgage, that's not an extra $600 expense on your full balance sheet. It's a replacement strategy. You're using the money you already spend. You're making it go to work for you instead of vanishing forever. By replacing that lost rent payment with a new house payment, you're investing into a forced savings account that's wrapped up in a roof over your head. So right there, that's a 2-for-1. But that's just the beginning of the financial benefits. Let's get into the rarely discussed ultra beneficial math. Most people compare renting versus buying with an incomplete spreadsheet. They only use 3 columns: the upfront cost, the down payment, the rent payment, and then compare that to the mortgage payment. But your true gains and losses, they need 7 columns to calculate them. I break it down in the rent versus buy episode. You can check the episode guide for the most recent version of that. But here's a quick summary to show you how the correct and complete calculations reveal that paying $600 more a month is actually going to put you ahead by tens of thousands of dollars when you put that rent payment to work for you in a home. The 7-column spreadsheet. Now, it starts with the 3 that most people use when they're analyzing the upfront cost, the rent, and the mortgage, but it's got 4 columns that most people rarely factor into the equation: principal reduction, a fixed payment, appreciation, and the tax benefits. So column number 4, principal reduction. You pay down the mortgage each month. Your rent money that was going to nothing now invests in something that you own. Now look, it's not very much at first because they front load the home loan with the interest in the first 10, 20 years of the loan, but it grows bigger each year and it goes into a forced savings account for you each month instead of just paying it to a landlord. More on how that works a little bit later. Column number 5, it's a fixed payment. You are done with rent increases forever. And unlike rent, a fixed mortgage payment, it's not rising every year. Now, you might not feel much of a difference in the first few years, but imagine this. What if today your rent payment was only what you were paying back in 2021 or 2018 or 2015? How much easier would it be to pay today's bills if your rent was frozen in those years? I mean, even if we ignored all the gains from all the other columns, if we just looked at the $600 difference with a fixed payment versus rising rents, how many years would it be before that gap is made up and the rent increases? And now suddenly you'd be paying more for rent than this frozen payment that you could have got today. And don't forget, if interest rates drop, you can refinance down into an even lower frozen payment. And column 6, appreciation. When the home goes up in value, that's free gains for you. The appreciation, also known as equity, that's why the boomers are all rich today, sitting on a gold mine of major equity in their homes. And the sooner that you start your home ownership, the richer that you're going to be later. In column 7, tax benefits. Home ownership has big write-offs that you don't get as a renter. The details are all in episode 521, and you don't want to miss out on these because these alone could be worth $3, $4, sometimes $5,000 or $6,000 every single year. And then there's a bonus column. It's not really a column, it's more of a concept to help you see how the full 7-column spreadsheet works. See, your landlord uses that 7-column spreadsheet to evaluate the financial benefits of buying the home or apartment that you're renting right now. So let's see how they run the numbers. I mean, after all, they must know something about wealth. They're your landlord. All right, let's go back to 2023. And your landlord decides to buy the 2-bedroom home that you're currently renting. Cost them $390,000. They used a 20% down payment. That was $78,000. And their monthly payment, $2,600. And in 2023, they were renting it to you for only $2,000. Now, wait a minute. What? Does that make sense? I mean, you were looking at this going, okay, I got to put 20 grand down and lose $600 a month. That's not financially smart. Well, did you just hear the landlord's numbers? What are they doing? Their math sucks. Why the hell would anybody put $78,000 into an investment that's going to cost them $600 a month? Okay, you see where I'm going with this? Landlords know the full math, and they're not focusing on just that one number, the monthly payment today. Landlords aren't dumb. I mean, they did something right because they just happen to have an extra $78,000 that they've got to invest. So what math are they using? They're looking at the frozen payment added to compounding gains. I'm going to say that again. The math they're looking at that creates true wealth is calculating things with a frozen payment and adding in the compounding gains that result from owning that particular asset. Every year they pay down the mortgage and they get the compounding gains on appreciation plus tax benefits to offset the cost. And the big thing that they really count on is that $600 gap is going to systematically shrink over the years. I mean, look at just the first 3 years. So they bought in 2023, frozen payment at $2,600. They're renting it to you for $2,000 a month, originally $600 loss each month. But according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, rents went up about 5% in 2024, another 3.6% in 2025, and another 2.2% so far in 2026. I'll do the math for you. That means that the rent today would be $2,222. So that $600 gap just dropped to $378. And using the national average of the rent increases over the last 30 years, that was 3.5%. That means if I add that up, by 2031, 8 years after they bought the home, the rent on the house is going to pass their $2,600 payment. So the gap is gone. That's just one column, the monthly payment. Remember, they've also got the other 4 columns running the whole time. Because while that gap was still there and their mortgage was more than the rent, they paid $31,255 to make up the difference in the monthly payment over those 8 years. But at the same time, they've also paid down the loan by $33,000. So on their balance sheet, with just that one column of paying down the loan, that gap actually cost them nothing. They're actually ahead by just a little under $2,000. Okay, the next column, appreciation gains. The house goes up in price. If it follows the historical home price appreciation, that would normally be 3 to 4% a year. But just to show you how powerful this math is, I'm going to go super low. I'm going to use only 2% appreciation. Now, that usually doesn't happen, and so that's an extremely low estimate. But in 8 years, if we use that number, the $390,000 home is now worth over $455,000. And with what they've been paying down, they only owe $279,000. That means a $176,000 gain in 8 years. So on the balance sheet, of course, we got to take away the $78,000 original investment. That's a $98,000 gain over 8 years. That's a 126% return. 98 grand on $78,000 invested 8 years ago. And remember, that's using the low 2% estimate. And we still haven't even gotten into the annual tax write-offs. But I'm going to blow past those. And let me answer the question that I asked you 3 minutes ago. Why would anybody put $78,000 into an investment that loses $600 a month? Well, because it doesn't lose $600 a month. It looks like it loses $600 a month, but it definitely doesn't do that forever. And most importantly, that's not the full math. And the difference between you and the landlord, you can do the same thing. You can use a low down payment option to get in for cheaper, but you can still get the same gains on the back end. And by going from renter to owner, you can use your lost monthly rent the same way the landlord used someone else's rent to pay for their home. The reality is, you're already inside a rent replacement strategy right now. You're just the product. See, your landlord, they're not in the instant profit business. They're in the compounding gains business, and they're getting rich doing it. And so now you can too, using the playbook I've been teaching renters for 20 years by mathematically uncovering all columns with a spreadsheet and realizing the compounding financial benefits of home ownership. And what makes me insane is that nobody in the real estate industry is breaking down this playbook for renters. It's truly why I quit my brokerage in 2019 and I grabbed this microphone. I wanted to share the rent replacement strategy to bring this wealth building math to regular first-time homebuyers. You know, people who didn't have an extra $78,000 just laying around in their drawer. But those same people, they did have thousands of dollars that they were spending each month on rent. So there it is. Voila, the rent replacement strategy. House poor frightens the hell out of people, and it should. But they're calculating it all wrong by only focusing on the single metric of the rent price versus the new mortgage price. I want everyone to have full clarity because honestly, if you can't confidently explain the math of the gains that you get as a homeowner, then you can't confidently assess what house poor truly means for you. The math is everything. And I don't want anybody to accept losses and miss big gains because they're using an incomplete formula. A rent payment versus a mortgage payment, that is not apples to apples. It's like apples compared to a full course meal. Stacks and stacks of benefits, and you already pay for what? 70, 80, 90% of it? Most of you are already doing most of this already. And today, the game's changed. And that's good news for you because for years, sellers had all the power, but today, it's shifting over to the buyers. On August 13th of 2026, Redfin published that in July, there were 51.3% more sellers on the housing market than buyers buying homes. It was like 1,462,921 sellers to 966,752 buyers. And why is that happening right now? Because too many buyers are only looking at the first three columns. They're scared, looking at the wrong numbers, not calculating the losses versus the complete gains. They don't know what you know now or what you will know by the end of this episode. IYKYK. Isn't that what the kids are saying? Here's the data that should have every aspiring first-time homebuyer stoked. Out of the 50 biggest metro areas in the country right now, 39 of them are buyers markets, 5 of them are flat, and only 6 of them are sellers markets. Miami, they've got 154% more sellers than buyers. Nashville, 151%. Houston, 130%. San Antonio, 116%. And Austin, 112% more. And here's where you get your power. In 41 of 50 of the largest metros, the typical home sells below the list price listed. And with more options in homes for sale and less buyer competition, Redfin is reporting right now that 46.2% of home sales included a seller concession. That means money back to you for your closing costs, repair credits, or a mortgage interest rate buy down. And in 15.7% of sales, buyers got both a seller concession cash back to them and a price cut. And this is happening with the new builders too. The National Association of Home Builders reports that in August of 2026, 63% of the builders are using sales incentives. 35% of them are just straight up cutting the prices. And the average cut is 6%, which is well above the pre-pandemic normal of only cuts at 2 or 3%. The numbers are in, and this season, the game, it's changed. Buyers have more power and leverage than we've seen in years. And here's why knowing your numbers now is going to give you a huge edge. Because the minute that something changes in favor of the buyers, if interest rates take a big dip, every one of those freaked out buyers who's only looking at their incomplete numbers of the monthly rent payment versus the mortgage payment, when they see the interest rates drop, they're going to come screaming off the sidelines all at once. And that means all the power and the leverage you have right now is going to evaporate. You can always refinance if rates go down, but you can never rebuy at today's price with today's leverage. As a buyer, you have to constantly evaluate the market around you today and see where you can take advantage of it. I'm a complete housing history and data nerd, and I've been running the rent replacement strategy numbers since 2006, finding the different ways to take advantage as the market shifts. I saw people when I first started my career go through the housing crash of 2008 and 2012, and buyers were so stoked, just sucking up homes at discount prices. But then here's what happened. When the housing market started to recover in 2012, buyers everywhere were skittish. You see, the crash was still fresh on their minds, and fear dominated their decisions instead of data. And the housing market always reacts to the data. Every fearful buyer who decided to wait out a year or 2 or 3 because they were too scared, hoping that somehow they would find the perfect buying scenario, they lost money on their rent while the home prices continued to move up. And when they finally did buy, I heard regrets from them every single year. Sidoni, I should have done this in 2012, 2015, 2019, 2021, 2023. I'm telling you, I heard it then, and I still hear it today, every single year. So in the 2026 Buy or Wait episode, I'm going to lay out the full calculations with the current data, but it's basically a re-explanation of the numbers that I'm sharing with you here today. It's all math. And in today's economy, you need every mathematical advantage that you can get to feel like you have any control of your financial future. So with that, let me drop the complete math on the 2 main arguments that I hear from people all the time who can't see or haven't been shown the complete gains formula. So with that, let me drop the math on the 2 main arguments that I hear all the time for people who haven't been shown the complete gains formula or they just can't see it. The first one is the stock bros. The people who tell you to rent cheap and invest your money in the stock market to make more gains because mortgages are too pricey right now. You know what? I'm going to deal with them in a minute. Let me get to the other one first. Because this one deals with the fear that so many renters feel, and it's costing them tens of thousands of dollars. That fear that you shouldn't buy now because this unaffordable market has to crash and it's going to get less expensive later. I mean, things are just way too expensive now. They can't last, right? I mean, the market's got to come down. All right, first up, I get it. There is absolute logic behind that thinking. Since home prices went up 50% from COVID to 2025, that can't continue. And in fact, it hasn't. See, most of those 50% gains, they happened from 2020 to 2023. And we've basically been flat from 23 to today for 3 years now. That's extremely significant. That flat period means that the rise that we had in home prices, it's now starting to average out. Let's focus on the data. For 7 years here on the podcast, each year I've been sharing projected forecasts on prices and interest rates from a huge pool of research that I've done from all the leading economists, combined with the decades of historical housing data and trends. And so far, for all 7 years, when I reported the prices would keep going up, even slightly a few years, people told me there's no way that could happen. But it did. You could check the tapes. Even when everybody, and I seriously mean everybody in the comment section, was trashing me, calling me a fool, saying, dude, it's so pricey right now. There's no way it can keep going up. These prices and rates are insane right now. Nobody can buy. It has to crash. I get it. I understand that it feels illogical, but it didn't crash because the data-driven forecasts that were shared here, they're based in data. And that analysis that I share, it's been accurate every single year. The reasons why are shared in the math and the data in each year's Buy or Wait episodes, as well as the monthly housing market updates. I usually give them once or twice a month. Here's what's happening right now. The Case-Shiller Index, one of the leading home price trackers, they did a report on 19 major markets. It was significant because 7 of them were rising, 7 were dead flat, and 5 of them were falling. Chicago was up 6.9, New York was up 4.2, Cleveland, Boston, San Francisco, Minneapolis, and Miami, they were all going up. And the 5 going down, they were between 1.3 and 1.9. So not crazy drops, but Not an increase, it was an actual decrease. That happened in Phoenix, Tampa, Denver, Seattle, and Las Vegas. But 7 markets, dead flat, plus or minus 1%. San Diego, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Charlotte, Atlanta, Portland, and Dallas. And just a little while ago, I gave my most recent forecast episode. That was 5/12 and 5/13. And the consensus on prices is that they're going to increase slowly through 2028 for most of the country. So let's look at the math to answer the question. If homes are flat, or they're only going up 1 or 2% a year, and the mortgage payment is going to be more than a rent payment, does this rent replacement strategy still make financial sense? This is real important math, especially if you're considering waiting versus buying now, because for those people, you're not choosing between buy a house and rent forever. What you're actually trying to figure out is when is the right time to buy. And lots of renters are thinking, you know what, let's let things settle down. I'll let prices come back to earth and maybe interest rates will drop. We'll keep an eye on this for 2 or 3 years. Like I said, first up, that's not what the experts see happening because they're analyzing all the data. I understand it doesn't feel logical to you, but if the market hasn't crashed in the last 3 years, then this flat market is pretty much what's going to continue. So to illustrate this for you, I ran the flat market math to show you the power of the 7-column spreadsheets. And I ran this in the most pessimistic way possible. I used a completely flat appreciation. 0, not $1 in 3 years. Same price 3 years from now. Here's how it all works out. The renter at $2,300 on that starter home, their rent's going to go up 3% a year, and that's $85,300 gone. All loss, 0 gains. Now let's look at the buyer side. Like I said, super pessimistic. 0 gains, no appreciation. And then on their monthly payment, they paid $104,400 in their PITI PMI payment versus $85,300 that the renter paid. So that means they're paying $19,100 more than the renter. But their principal was paid down $13,614. And if you add in the tax benefits, $4,000 a year, $12,000, the total is $25,641. So even if homes go up $0 in 3 years, the buyer still comes out ahead by $6,541. And here's the thing. They also have a jump start on the whole cycle of owning a home. They're 3 years in to the same cycle that the renter, they said they're committed to do. They're just going to start it 3 years later. And that renter is eventually going to have to pay the same taxes, the same insurance, but now the buyer is 3 years ahead in that cycle. And even if the homes don't go up 1 penny, they're still ahead $6,541. This is using the worst, most pessimistic version of buying a home right now, even though all the economic experts are expecting a 2 to 4% gain over the next 3 years. And if you're thinking, yeah, David, but what if interest rates drop? The interest rate is the one variable in this entire equation that has a do-over for the buyer. You can always refinance if rates go down. Super important to remember now because as a homeowner, you can redo your loan, but you can't rebuy with today's leverage because the day the rates drop, every single person playing the 3-year waiting game on the sidelines is going to rush onto the field at the same time. That means the 51% of the sellers who are giving concessions now, that'll be gone. So waiting out a flat market for it to cool down, it doesn't rescue you. It just quietly bills you along the way. But for the homeowner, armed with the math of the compound gains of a rent replacement strategy, you can start confidently building your financial wealth and take advantage of the extra powers that a buyer has today in this housing market. All right, now let's go back to the first argument that I mentioned because I've been hearing this one a lot recently from the financial gurus. Ramit Sethi and Ben Felix and that whole crowd of financial folks, their argument is, hey, don't buy a house now. Don't wait for prices to drop. Their argument is, hey, it's like this, don't even worry about buying at all. Spend the extra money that you would spend each month on a mortgage and instead put that in the stock market. Rent something cheap and put all the extra into stocks and you'll make 8% gains on that money. And sure, that math works in 30 years on paper. on a spreadsheet over 30 years. If you compare owning a $400,000 house to renting a $2,000 apartment, and the renter invests every single spare dollar into the stock market, gets 8% on that, they don't take it out and they don't pay the taxes on it, then the renter makes more money on paper. But good luck keeping a $2,000 rent for the next 30 years. And also, let's not forget the taxes. Even if you ignore that, here's my general thoughts of why this doesn't hold up in the real world. Reason number one, and this is the big one, the comparison, the straight comparison they're making, it's a lie about housing. Because you're comparing a house to a cheap apartment, the cheapest apartment you can get. That's not apples to apples, not the same quality of life. You're accepting that you've made this decision that you want to live as cheaply as possible in a non-luxury lifestyle for the next 10 years and invest all your extra cash so you can ball out in your 40s and 50s. Like I said, if you want to do that, more power to you. Just be sure you understand what renting cheap for the next 5-10 years looks like. And reason number two, great. Sounds cool to be a baller in your 40s or 50s, but are you actually gonna invest every extra dollar you get every single month? That plan requires major discipline that most people hugely underestimate. In our $400,000 rent versus buy comparison, the investor, you've got to start investing the full $32,000 up front and then contribute between $600 and $1,100 every single month for 10 years without ever skipping a month. Never deciding to, buy a new car, go on a trip, or what if you have to pay for a wedding, or what if you just have a bad month? I've been seeing these gurus teach this for 20 years. I've been hearing this the whole time that I've been in real estate, and it's gotten a lot louder in the last 5 years. But you know what's crazy? No one's listening because the numbers for the renters with wealth, it's not there. The Federal Reserve survey of consumer finances showed that the net worth of a homeowner is $396,000 and the net worth of the median renter, 10 grand. And it makes sense to me because that's the difference between a plan that automates itself and a plan that requires you to be a monk for a decade or more. Mortgages work because they're automatic. It's a forced savings account with a locked door. Your 401k works for the exact same reason. Nobody gets rich on investments they have to remember to make. Not to mention there's going to be temptation every single month if people want to live their life a little bit. And then reason number three, I mentioned it earlier, the taxes. Gurus almost never put this huge tax advantage in the rent and invest the difference spreadsheet. And the finance guys, what's crazy about this is they love tax advantages. They talk about them all the time. But you know what? They conveniently seem to forget that home ownership has the biggest tax loop available to a regular person that ever existed. When a renter sells their investment portfolio, their stocks, they've got to hand 15 to 20% to the government capital gains. But when a buyer sells their primary residence, because of the capital gains exemption, a single filer gets $250,000 of profit completely tax-free. And if they're married, it's $500,000 tax-free. So those are my three reasons. And hey, I'm not telling you the gurus are stupid. I'm telling you they're pitching something that doesn't have the same playbook that it sounds like when they give you a 30-second clip on TikTok. I'm telling you they're solving a different problem. How to get rich if you're willing to live small and invest like a machine in your 20s and 30s. That's a lifestyle choice. It's not a housing plan for a normal human being who wants a place to live and some security while they're doing it. But you know what? If you want to do that, rock on. You do you. I just report the math. Whew. Okay, deep breath. I know this has been a lot of math, but here's another piece of encouraging data that supports the rent replacement strategy. Your first years in the home will suck the most. Yeah, you didn't expect that, did you? I know, it's a horrible sales pitch, right? Not a lot of realtors and lenders are selling you that story. But what I mean is, your monthly payment's never going to feel more expensive than it does in the first 1, 2, and 3 years. And I'm not afraid to say that out loud because I'm absolutely not here to convince or pressure you into anything. I'm just here to educate, give you the math, and then let you make the best decision for you. Because I know when everyone's got the math, then there's nobody that's going to panic. They're going to confidently know that, all right, it's going to suck at first, but each year it gets easier and easier, and I get gains on the backside. In today's world, most people need to hear they can use a low down payment just to get in because the big down payments scare the crap out of everybody. And yeah, it's probably going to be a higher monthly payment than your rent is right now. I'm not hiding from that, but it does stay fixed and the gap will shrink. And at the same time, you're going to grow in your career. You're going to get raises. And every single year after you buy a home and you give up your rent, the math is going to get easier while a renter's math gets harder and harder. Sometimes the inflation in the rent rises doesn't even keep up with the wage increases that you may or may not get. So the people waiting 3 years for things to cool down, in 3 years, they're going to be on their first year of their mortgage sucking the most, the hardest it's ever going to be. You're already going to be 3 years into it getting easier and easier. And then here's something that doesn't show up on the spreadsheets. Getting a home, that's a quality of life upgrade and a huge mental stress reliever. You are now in control of your life, control of your housing costs. That is priceless. Less stress when you know exactly what's going to happen next year and the year after that. I had a client say it to me better than I think I've ever said it. She said, David, looking at the math 3 years out, you know what? I'd rather feel a little house poor in the first few years than lose $100,000 over 3 years and still be renting and then just be poor. Well, I couldn't agree more. But the cool thing was we pulled her back a little bit and she found out how to buy without even feeling house poor ever. And the way she did that was using all the action steps that are going to be part 2 of this playbook. Now, I know some of you out there might be wondering, dude, if this is such an advantage, why aren't more real estate people preaching this motto? Well, it's because the real estate industry has ignored first-time homebuyers for decades. Realtors and lenders, they want buyers who can move quickly so they can get paid fast. Wish it wasn't true, but it is. And I've been trying to explain this to everybody for a long time. And there's a playbook that's been built on guiding first-time homebuyers and setting up their roadmap to buy months down the line. But you know what? These people haven't bothered to learn it because they look at that as too much work for too little pay. And that sucks. So I'm here to bring the power back to the people, and it comes in the form of math. And there's some more great news for you. If you're spending all this time with me in your ear holes, listening to this, I'm telling you, most of you, if not all of you, could qualify for a home much earlier than you think. That's not an opinion. Once again, I defer to the data. Down payments are not at 20%. The average is 10% right now, but most first-time home buyers are averaging 3.5%, or 5% down, and they're finding affordable options. And there are right now 2,746 down payment assistance programs active nationwide. 234 of them are straight grants that you never have to pay back. 62% of them allow incomes above $100,000. Yeah, I know you didn't think that was true. 62%. And 291 of them, they have no income limit at all. Some of the people in the industry have figured out what they need to do for first-time homebuyers in this economy, and things are changing. They're expanding for you. And here at How to Buy a Home, 72% of the people that reach out to us and tell us they think they're 12 to 18 months before they're going to be ready to buy a home, but they just want to get started on a plan. They find out that they are way more ready than they thought. And even though they said 12 to 18 months, 72% of them are under contract with a home in 3.2 months when they discover all their options. 3.2 months. All it takes is learning the playbook. This is part 1. And part 2, the Last Lease Ever program, that's where you're going to get some simple monthly activities that anybody can do 12 or 24 months out and make it your true last lease ever. Okay, and the final piece of the core philosophy, it's this. You're not buying this home for all cash. You got to get a loan. So forget buying the dream home. We're using this first home to build a dream life. So instead of your HGTV dreaming about picturesque perfection, let's turn the focus on the very real concept of the rent replacement strategy, the first step to financial freedom. This is how you beat the affordability crisis. So for a lot of you out there, this might mean that you're going to buy a starter home or maybe even a slight step up into a condo or a townhome. And yeah, I know it might feel like a compromise, especially from what you've envisioned of this dream home. But that starter home, that first step, takes the biggest monthly payment that you make and puts it to work for you. That is leverage, because you're going to need that to thrive in a system that is built against the little guy right now. And not just the little guy, but the middle guy as well. This is the first step in a long game that leads to stability, security, and wealth. And a home purchase, you got to start thinking about it different. It's different from any other purchase you ever made, because you're not just taking out a chunk of money from your bank account and buying a thing. It's not a product that serves you for a little while and then it depreciates and gets old and it needs replacing. You're using money you already spend every month and you're buying a multi-purpose asset, replacing that mandatory lost payment that you have for shelter right now with shelter that's usually an upgrade. Plus, it's a forced savings account that will literally transform your financial future. And if you're one of those people who thinks that, I can't do it, man, a mortgage is going to tie me down. I want to rent so I can keep my freedom. All right, cool. I mean, I don't want you to give up your freedom. I'm totally with you. I'm a dude who never took the normal path in my life. I've just followed my passion. So I'm with you. But I can give you hindsight from your cringy unk here. I have that gift of an old man looking back. Either or, that doesn't have to be the only option today. It's not rent or buy. You can have a both and life and never feel tied down. In this replacement strategy, you can use the option to fund your best life. Most people don't know that that's even possible because the industry never bothered to show them that there's a playbook to buy a home and build a life. They just want to sell you a home. And that feels like, ooh, that's a big rock around my neck that I can't get out of. But when you're talking to someone who's giving you the life playbook, they know that when you own instead of rent, you can still go to Fiji for 6 months and rent your place out. And in 5 years, you could trade up for a new place, and that could be in a different state or a different country. I mean, what's the difference between moving someplace else and all you've got in your pocket is a security deposit, or you've got 5 years of equity? And you know what? Maybe you don't want to move someplace. Maybe you just want to cash out completely and travel the world. Thanks to those capital gains tax exemptions for homeowners, you're going to get $250,000 or $500,000 of that profit tax-free. And you know what? If you've done all the math, rock on. I hope you learned something here and you do whatever you want. For those of you who have listened this long, I'm thinking maybe you're trying to figure out something that can give you a little bit of stability because you work hard for your rent money. And after 30 days, you've gained nothing. No return, no asset, no equity. It's just gone. You've achieved shelter for 1 month. And then what happens? You got to do it all over again the next month. And the new reality in 26, 27, and 28, if you're listening, that the only way the middle class is going to thrive in this economy is to get in the game early, to use leverage and use an asset that will give them options later on. Because just sitting back and hoping everything's going to get better, that doesn't look like that's going to happen. And if you're sitting there thinking right now, all right, dude, I got it. Where are the tools so I can implement my rent replacement strategy? Okay, first up, there are tips on how much you need for a down payment and closing costs. That's in the last episode, 522. Tons of tips on the low down payment strategies that real buyers like you are using right now to find affordable options today. And if you think a big down payment and avoiding PMI is the only way to get an affordable monthly payment, it is not. And don't just listen to my words. This isn't an opinion, it's math. And it's all there just one episode back, 522. And then you can jump back to 515. It's 7 full episodes with tips on how to save and how much you need to save. Learn about down payment assistance programs, buying with student loans, low down payment strategies for buyers who've got $100,000 saved a day, or buyers that only have $1,000 and you're just getting started. All the strategies are there. And now you've got part 1 of the playbook done. Next are the plays. That's part 2 of the playbook. And of course, when you're running the plays, a big part of those action steps is to hire the right coaches. The earlier, the better. And together, you can build a game plan that's going to get you to the championship. Here's a teaser. Your coaches, they're going to help you find the real numbers to qualify for a home, not the fear-based myths that keep renters stuck renting for too long. The right coaches, they're never going to make you feel pressured. They're going to educate first. And then it's your decision when, or I don't know, even if you want to buy a home. It'll be the natural next step in the progression of your education. and then you'll figure out when it works best for you. And no one's ever going to get pushed into anything. I do not condone reckless buying, spending every cent you have to take on a mortgage that's way over your budget. My entire world, 24/7, 365, is coaching people to do this correctly and securely on their best timeline, whatever that takes, 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years. But I've seen and heard so many people who they look at their options and they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm not comfortable with this. And then they come back to me years later full of regret because they let the fear of being house poor keep them from digging deep into all the math that you've just heard here today. Renting is survival. Owning is where you start growth. And if we do end up staying in a flat market for the next 2 or 3 years, it's not less true that owning is growth. It's more true. Because when nobody's getting rich off appreciation, the only thing that's left is the nuance of a strategy that utilizes other compounding financial tools. All right, team, good job in training camp. Grab some Gatorade and then meet me inside the classroom because up next, we're going to break out the action steps in the playbook. That's part 2. And gang, you can do this.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers. So visit howtobuyaHome.com to get started.